By 1807, Napoleon Bonaparte controlled most of continental Europe. He had won every major battle for a decade straight. Austerlitz, Jena, Wagram. One impossible victory after another. European rulers feared him. European armies copied him. He had rebuilt France from chaos into the most powerful state in history. But Napoleon was not a god. He was a man. And men make mistakes. 5 mistakes, each one bigger than the last. 5 blunders that unraveled the greatest empire the modern world had ever seen. His enemies were watching, waiting for exactly this. Here are the 5 military blunders that destroyed Napoleon's army, starting with the one enemy he could never truly defeat. Blunder 1. The Battle of Trafalgar and the Continental System. For years, Napoleon had planned to invade Britain. He could never do it. The reason was simple. Britain had the most powerful navy in the world. Napoleon ordered the French and Spanish fleets to combine and clear the Channel. The combined fleet had 33 ships of the line. Nelson had only 27. On paper, France had the advantage. Nelson ignored the rules. He divided his fleet into 2 columns and attacked perpendicular to the enemy line. No one had ever attacked a battle line this way. It was suicidal, and it worked. British ships sailed into the French line at close range, firing both sides at once. The French fleet was thrown into confusion. Ship after ship was captured or sunk. Nelson was shot by a French sniper at the moment of his greatest victory. He died below decks. When the battle ended, France had lost 22 ships. Britain had lost none. Napoleon's dream of invading Britain died at Trafalgar, forever. Unable to beat Britain by sea, Napoleon invented a new kind of weapon: economic warfare. If Europe refused to trade with Britain, Britain would go bankrupt. Napoleon called it the Continental System, a total trade blockade of Britain. Every European port was ordered closed to British ships and British goods. The logic was sound. Britain was an island. It depended on exports to survive. But the plan had a fatal flaw. Europeans needed British goods too: sugar, coffee, cotton, textiles. Britain was the world's factory. European merchants could not survive without these goods, so they smuggled them. Smuggling became an industry. The blockade was porous everywhere. To enforce the blockade, Napoleon sent soldiers to every European coastline. This turned neutral nations into enemies. They did not want French soldiers on their soil. Portugal refused to close its ports. Napoleon decided to invade. To reach Portugal, French troops marched through Spain. They never really left. One blunder had triggered the next. Trafalgar led directly to Spain. Napoleon's fleet admiral, Villeneuve, was terrified of engaging the British. He refused to leave port for months. Napoleon sent order after order demanding Villeneuve act. Villeneuve ignored each one. Napoleon threatened to relieve him of command. Villeneuve finally sailed from Cadiz on October 19, 1805. Before the battle, Nelson sent one final message to his fleet. England expects every man will do his duty. Villeneuve watched Nelson's attack columns approaching. He had no counter-tactic ready. By evening, Villeneuve himself was captured. He surrendered his sword to a British naval officer. After Trafalgar, Britain's navy controlled every sea. No French fleet ever challenged it again. Napoleon buried the disaster. French newspapers were ordered to report a minor skirmish. Britain responded with its own blockade. Royal Navy warships positioned outside every French-controlled port. Napoleon forced every nation he controlled to join the Continental System. Those who refused would face his armies. Denmark was forced to join. Britain immediately seized the Danish navy before Napoleon could use it. To enforce the blockade, Napoleon stationed French customs officers in every member nation's ports. In Britain, sugar prices tripled and coffee became a luxury. But the economy did not collapse. Britain adapted. War industries boomed. The blockade of France funded the coalition against Napoleon. The Continental System was failing, and in trying to enforce it, Napoleon had started a second war. Blunder 2, the Peninsular War. Napoleon removed the Spanish king and replaced him with his own brother, Joseph. He thought the Spanish would accept it. He was catastrophically wrong. On May 2, 1808, the people of Madrid rose up against French troops. The French response was brutal. Hundreds of civilians were executed. The executions did not end the resistance. They inflamed it. Spain had no regular army left that could challenge Napoleon, so they fought differently. Guerrilla. The word is Spanish. It means little war. Hit and run. Attack and vanish. Never fight where the enemy is strong. Every French supply convoy needed a military escort just to survive. To protect supply convoys, Napoleon needed soldiers in Spain. Soldiers in Spain could not fight in any other war. The guerrillas attacked not just convoys. They killed messengers, cut telegraph lines, burned bridges. French soldiers controlled the cities. The countryside was death. Napoleon sent his best generals to fix it. Soult, Messina, Ney, all of them failed. Napoleon called Spain the Spanish ulcer. It never healed. Then Britain made it worse. They sent their best general to Portugal, Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, the one general Napoleon never defeated. Wellington did not chase glory. He built supply lines, chose strong ground, and waited. His supplies came by sea. British ships controlled the Atlantic. The route was safe. Napoleon's supplies came overland through Spain, through guerrilla country. Wellington bled French resources at every opportunity. A battle here, a retreat there. He never risked his army in a battle he might lose. He was patient beyond measure. By 1810, Spain and Portugal required 370,000 French soldiers just to hold. 370,000 veterans who were not available anywhere else. For 6 years, Spain drained France of men, money, and morale. While Napoleon bled in Spain, one of his most important allies turned against him. Joseph Bonaparte was hated from the day he arrived. No loyalty, no popular support. Unlike France's centralized army, the guerrillas had dozens of independent leaders across Spain. Impossible to destroy centrally. The Catholic Church declared the French invaders enemies of God. Every priest became a recruiter for the resistance. Napoleon's soldiers burned villages suspected of helping guerrillas. Each burning created 10 more fighters. Guerrilla leaders like Espos y Mina commanded thousands and ran their own supply chains and courts martial. Wellington built a secret defensive network. 152 forts stretching across Portugal from Lisbon to the Atlantic. French Marshal Massena marched to the lines and stopped. His army spent a winter starving outside them. Massena retreated. Wellington's lines had destroyed another French army without a single pitched battle. In July 1812, Wellington went on the offensive. At Salamanca, he destroyed a French army in 40 minutes. June 1813. Wellington routed the French at Vittoria. Joseph Bonaparte fled Spain in a carriage, leaving his crown. Spain cost France $300,000 dead, wounded, or captured over 6 years, more than any other single campaign. By 1814, Wellington was crossing the Pyrenees, advancing into southern France. A second front was open. Napoleon now had 2 wars, Spain in the west, Russia and Austria in the east. Napoleon had predicted Spain would submit in weeks. He never understood that an occupied people can fight without an army. With Spain still unresolved, Napoleon turned east. Tsar Alexander had broken the Continental System. Blunder 3, the invasion of Russia. Tsar Alexander I had been Napoleon's ally after the Treaty of Tilsit in 1807. But the Continental System was destroying Russia's economy. Russian nobles needed to sell grain and timber to Britain. The blockade stopped them. In 1810, Tsar Alexander simply reopened Russian ports to British trade. Napoleon sent a furious ultimatum: close the ports or face war. Alexander ignored it. Napoleon began planning the largest invasion in history. He would call it the Grande Armée, 600,000 soldiers from 20 nations. It was the largest army ever assembled in European history. On June 24, 1812, Napoleon crossed the Niemen River into Russia with 600,000 men. He expected a fast campaign, 2 months, 3 at most. The Russians retreated immediately. No great battle at the border. Russian General Kutuzov had a plan. Make France chase Russia across Russia and burn everything. Every village, every crop, every barn, every bridge. Napoleon's army marched forward and found nothing to eat. The supply wagons fell further and further behind on the bad Russian roads. The roads turned to mud in July rain. Horses died. Wagons broke down. Soldiers began dying of starvation and disease before a single real battle was fought. Of the 600,000 who entered Russia, 200,000 were dead or gone by September from disease alone. Finally, the Russians turned and fought at Borodino, 70 miles from Moscow. Napoleon had 135,000 soldiers. Russia had 120,000. The battle lasted 1 day. It was the bloodiest single day of the entire Napoleonic Wars. By nightfall, 70,000 men were dead or wounded, on both sides combined. Napoleon held back his Imperial Guard, the most elite unit in the world. His marshals pleaded with him, "Commit the Guard, end it now." Napoleon refused. He said he would not risk the last reserve of his empire this far from France. Russia retreated. Technically, Borodino was a French victory, but Russia still had its army. Napoleon had gained nothing but 70,000 casualties. 1 week later, Napoleon entered Moscow. He expected diplomats and peace talks. Moscow was on fire. The Russians had set their own capital on fire rather than let Napoleon use it. For 5 weeks, Napoleon waited in the ruins for peace negotiations that never came. He sent 3 peace letters to Tsar Alexander. All 3 were ignored. Outside Moscow, the Russian army grew stronger. Inside Moscow, the French grew weaker. In mid-October, the first snow fell. Napoleon finally ordered the retreat. October 19th, 1812. The Grande Armée began marching back to France. The temperature fell to -30 degrees Celsius. The army that marched into Russia in summer uniforms froze in the Russian winter. Russian Cossack cavalry attacked the retreating columns constantly. Soldiers who fell behind were killed. Those who kept moving starved slowly. At the Berezina River, the ice had melted. There was no bridge. Napoleon's engineers built 2 emergency pontoon bridges under constant Cossack attack. Thousands drowned or were killed in the chaos of crossing. Of 600,000 who entered Russia, fewer than 100,000 returned. The Grande Armée had ceased to exist. The loss of the Grande Armée shattered Napoleon's aura of invincibility. Every European capital took note. To replace the lost army, Napoleon demanded new conscripts. Boys as young as 15 were called up. Russia had also suffered, but Russia had unlimited land, manpower, and the burning desire to liberate Europe. The Napoleon who returned from Russia was changed, quieter, less decisive, haunted. Russia proved the impossible. Napoleon could be beaten. Prussia, Austria, and Sweden began mobilizing immediately. France was exhausted. Every village had lost sons to Russia. The empire was bleeding internally. Napoleon chose not to negotiate. He chose to fight on. His next gamble would be in Germany. Blunder 4, the Battle of Nations. Europe saw Napoleon's weakness and acted. Russia, Prussia, Austria, Britain, Sweden, and Spain formed a coalition. Napoleon rebuilt an army from scratch. Teenagers and old men filled the ranks. He had lost his best veterans in Russia. This new army was not the same, But Napoleon was still Napoleon. He won battles at Lutzen and Bautzen in the spring of 1813. His enemies had learned from a decade of defeat. They developed a new strategy. The Trafalgar plan: never face Napoleon directly. Attack and defeat his marshals instead. If Napoleon rode to rescue a marshal, retreat and attack somewhere else. One by one, Napoleon's marshals were defeated when he was not there. By October 1813, 500,000 coalition soldiers had surrounded Leipzig. Napoleon had 185,000 soldiers, the coalition had 380,000, and reserves still arriving. For 3 days, the largest battle of the Napoleonic Wars raged around Leipzig. Napoleon rode to every crisis personally. Brilliant tactics in an impossible situation. On the third day, Napoleon's ammunition ran out completely. He ordered the retreat. There was only one road west across the Elster River. There was only one bridge. Napoleon sent 100,000 soldiers across it. While 30,000 soldiers were still crossing, a panicked engineer blew the bridge. 30,000 French soldiers were captured or killed on the wrong side of the river. Napoleon fled west with barely 80,000 soldiers. Germany was lost. Napoleon's allies abandoned him. Bavaria, Saxony, and Westphalia switched sides. In January 1814, coalition armies crossed the French border. Napoleon fought brilliantly against 4 armies at once. He could not stop them all. In March 1814, the coalition entered Paris. Napoleon abdicated. In June 1813, Austria offered to broker a peace deal. Napoleon refused the terms. Napoleon's refusal was fatal. Austria declared war and joined the coalition with 300,000 soldiers. With Austria, the coalition had over 800,000 soldiers against Napoleon's 300,000. The arithmetic was impossible. Napoleon won brilliantly at Dresden, but his marshals lost 3 battles simultaneously elsewhere. At Leipzig, fighting opened on October 16th. Napoleon attacked outward on all fronts, trying to break through. On day 2, Napoleon's Saxon allies suddenly turned their cannons and fired on the French beside them. In February 1814, Napoleon fought a last brilliant campaign inside France. 4 victories in 6 days. But the coalition had 6 armies. Defeating 4, still left 2. Reserves arrived faster than Napoleon could fight. March 30th, 1814. Coalition armies entered Paris. Citizens watched Russian and Prussian soldiers march their streets. Napoleon wanted to march on Paris and retake it. His marshals refused. They had given enough. April 6th, 1814. Napoleon abdicated. He was to be exiled to the island of Elba. That night, Napoleon attempted suicide with poison he had carried since Russia. He survived. Louis XVI returned to Paris. Europe believed Napoleon was finished forever. Blunder 5, the 100 Days and the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon was exiled to Elba, a tiny island. He was given sovereignty over it. He spent 11 months there, watching, planning. Then he escaped. On the night of February 26, 1815, with 1,100 soldiers, he landed in southern France and began marching north. The French king sent an army to stop him. The army joined Napoleon instead. Every regiment sent to stop him joined him. His force grew with every mile. On March 20th, Napoleon entered Paris. King Louis XV fled. Europe assembled its armies immediately. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia would converge on France with over 1 million soldiers. Napoleon had one window of opportunity: destroy each army before they combined. He moved north into Belgium to attack Wellington and Blucher before they joined forces. On June 16th, he attacked Blucher at Ligny and won. Blucher retreated north. Napoleon sent Marshal Grouchy with 33,000 men to pursue the Prussians and keep them away. Grouchy took the wrong road. He spent 2 days looking for a Prussian army that outmarched him. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon faced Wellington at Waterloo in Belgium. Wellington had chosen his ground perfectly, a low ridge, difficult for cavalry to charge. Wellington hid his infantry behind the ridge. Napoleon could not see how many men he had there. Napoleon should have attacked at dawn. The ground was wet from the night's rain. He waited until 11:30 a.m. Those lost hours gave Blucher time to march toward Waterloo. The battle began. Napoleon's artillery opened up on Wellington's ridge. Wellington's line bent under the pressure, but did not break. Hours passed. Napoleon committed his cavalry prematurely. 10,000 horsemen charged the British ridge. Wellington's infantry formed squares. In square formation, cavalry cannot break infantry. The cavalry charge achieved nothing. 10,000 horses could not break a square. At 6 p.m., Napoleon committed the Imperial Guard, his last reserve. The Imperial Guard had never been defeated. Their reputation alone broke enemy morale. As the Guard crested the ridge, hidden British guards rose and fired at point-blank range. The Imperial Guard broke and ran. The undefeatable had been defeated. The cry swept the French army, "La Garde recule," the Guard is retreating. At that exact moment, Blucher's Prussians arrived on the French right flank. The French army collapsed. Total rout. On Elba, Napoleon ruled 12,000 subjects. He reorganized their minds, built roads, and raised a small army. While Napoleon was on Elba, the Congress of Vienna broke down. Europe's allies argued about everything. Napoleon marched 700 kilometers from the south coast to Paris in 20 days. Not a single shot was fired. European capitals reacted with shock. The Vienna Congress halted. Every nation ordered immediate mobilization. Napoleon sent peace messages to every European court declaring his intentions. Every message was ignored. Napoleon's 100 Days Army was only 125,000 men. The coalition was assembling 800,000. Napoleon ordered an attack on Hougoumont Farm to draw Wellington's reserves. It absorbed 14,000 French soldiers. Napoleon's main assault, D'Erlon's corps of 16,000 infantry, charged Wellington's center at 1:30 p.m. Wellington's cavalry countercharged and shattered D'Erlon's columns. 6,000 French prisoners taken. Marshal Ney misread a British movement as a retreat and ordered the cavalry charge too early, alone, unsupported. The 52nd Regiment executed a flanking maneuver no one expected and hit the Imperial Guard's exposed flank. Napoleon fled the field at 9 p.m. in his personal carriage. He abandoned his hat, his sword, his empire. Napoleon reached Paris on June 21st. He abdicated again 4 days later. There would be no third return. Napoleon surrendered to the British Captain Maitland aboard HMS Bellerophon. He was sent to St. Helena. Napoleon fled. 4 days later, he abdicated for the final time. He was exiled to St. Helena, a tiny island in the South Atlantic. He died there in 1821. 5 blunders, all connected. Trafalgar locked him out of Britain. Britain funded his enemies. The Continental System pushed him into Spain. Spain consumed his best soldiers. Russia destroyed his army. Leipzig finished his empire. And Waterloo ended everything. Napoleon was the greatest military mind of his age. But genius does not protect against pride, impatience, and underestimating your enemy. No empire, no matter how powerful, survives 5 blunders of this size.